Hey guys, LevelCap here, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Gaming, the new show where we cover everything and anything that has to do with first-person shooters. Blizzard this week dropped the ban hammer big time, taking out over 10,000 Korean players using aimbots and DDoS attacks. Korea has been a hotbed for cheaters the past few months, with the government there going so far as to criminalize cheating and distributing aimbots. 10,000 bans is a huge number. By comparison, Rainbow Six Siege's latest ban wave took out a mere 300 or so players. Granted, Overwatch's player base is way bigger than Siege or most games in general, but even so, axing 10,000 players from your game is no joke. And for the remaining 20-odd million Overwatch players out there, you'll be happy to hear that the devs are still trying to make Roadhog's hook more fair. In the most recent developer update video, Overwatch's game director Jeff Kaplan acknowledged that Roadhog's hook still needs work. Despite recent changes to how the hook interacts with the game world, it still feels really unfair to get hooked and instantly killed. Very few, if any, other heroes in Overwatch have that kind of stopping power outside of their ultimate abilities, so Roadhog's hook being a basic ability can make him very frustrating to play against. Kaplan also ruled out a PTR on consoles, as well as stating that the work is being done to further balance Sombra, D.Va, and Ana. Overwatch is also getting another holiday event coming this Tuesday to celebrate the Chinese New Year, so look forward to some new skins and game modes. The Division's next expansion, Final Stand, was revealed this week. It brings a whole new matchmaking mode, another level to the Dark Zone, and a dedicated PvP arena, among other things. Last Stand's matchmaking is going to group players into 4-man squads with 2 squads per side. There are 3 objective areas the squads fight over to increase their score. Set in the Dark Zone, this game mode features both PvP and PvE combat. In a nutshell, Last Stand sounds like what Dark Zone should have been at launch, a PvP objective-focused game mode instead of just wandering around hoping you don't get mowed down by a random group of players. There are no rogue agent mechanics, so getting killed and losing all your loot and XP won't be a thing. Ranking up in Last Stand also guarantees you a loot drop, and the progression system includes set unlocks at certain milestones. All things considered, I'm actually looking forward to checking out Last Stand despite me really not enjoying the Division overall. It being the final announcement expansion for the Division leaves the game in sort of an uncertain place. The developers seem committed to making the game as good as it can be, but does that include more expansions and game modes, or are tweaks and bug fixes enough to get the game feeling properly finished? I guess only time will tell, but the small player base isn't that promising. In other multiplayer game news, Ubisoft has revealed all the details regarding For Honor's upcoming closed beta. 9 of the game's 12 heroes will be unlocked, with 3 game modes to play as well as 6 playable environments. The closed beta starts on the 26th for all platforms. Personally, I'm pretty excited to see how the game has developed since I last played it in December. Ubisoft have made a lot of tweaks to the game since the initial alpha that I covered a few months ago. I'd also like to see if the single player's reduced user interface mode has made its way into multiplayer. I really enjoyed my time with the multiplayer, and the single player was also pretty entertaining. Speaking of betas, Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 is getting an open beta in February. The developers put out a 16-minute gameplay trailer that looks fairly interesting. Ghost Warrior 2 was somewhere in between Call of Duty and Sniper Elite. The new game looks something a little closer to Sniper Elite, where planning, spotting, and taking down enemies in more of an open world kind of way is the game's general focus. Visually, it looks pretty good, but my biggest concern is how good the actual gameplay is. Ghost Warrior 2 also looked nice, but left a lot to be desired. For a sniper game, it looks like it really pushes close-quarter gunfights on you a lot. The sniper sim genre doesn't have a huge amount of competition, with Sniper Elite really being one of the biggest games out there, and you could kind of call Arma maybe a sniper sim, but that takes a lot more setting up. So this game really does have a pretty good chance of attracting a decent-sized audience if it can blend its casual gameplay with some of the fun open-world mechanics that the other games out there offer. Now, for people who are still on the fence about Watch Dogs 2, they can get 3 hours of playtime for free now on PlayStation 4. The same offer is coming to Xbox One on the 24th. Despite reviews generally praising Watch Dogs 2 for addressing all of the first game's issues, it seems like the game didn't perform as well as Ubisoft had hoped. Personally, I enjoyed my time with Watch Dogs 2, so if you have a PS4 or Xbox One, I suggest you give it a shot since it is free. It's a fun game that expanded on all the cool elements of Watch Dogs 1 without bringing much, if any, of the negatives along for the ride. Now, in a weird move, G2A.com have published their first VR title. It's called G2A Land, and it's a collection of VR minigames featuring roller coasters and carnival-style shooters. The game was developed by G2A's in-house dev team, which includes employees from the site's 700-person team. Now, many publishers and developers shun the practice of gray market key selling, as it's really just profiting off of a lot of developers' hard work, and clearly the profits have been high if they're able to create their own and what it looks like to be a pretty high production quality VR title. Ironically though, the G2A game keys are not even listed in the G2A marketplace. Perhaps the creators of this gray key marketplace don't even want their legitimate game keys anywhere near it. Frankly, I could go on and on about the dirty and seedy practices of this company, but I have already. If you guys want to know more information about G2A and some of the things I think they're doing wrong, you can check out a video I made called G2A Den of Thieves. Now, sticking around with the VR-related gaming news, Oculus has also come under fire recently. ZENIMAX, the parent company of id Software, is claiming that Oculus based their tech on code John Carmack wrote before he left id to be Oculus's CTO. The case is currently in court this week. Both Mark Zuckerberg and Palmer Luckey took to the stand to testify. ZeniMax is basically saying Luckey lacked the experience to develop the Rift without external help, and that Carmack provided that help. The case goes to the jury to decide next week, so I'm sure we'll have the verdict sometime soon. In other hardware news, it sounds like the Nintendo Switch won't actually be hitting 1080p in all games when it's docked. Nintendo confirmed this week that the Switch's big launch title, Zelda Breath of the Wild, will run at 900p on the console when it's docked. Now that's better than the Wii U version of the game, which only runs at 720p, but it's still somewhat disappointing. Nintendo has never been known for being the industry leader in console processing power, but they've also never really needed to be. Their games aren't the Crysis and Battlefield graphically intensive experiences that other platforms offer, so while Zelda only running at 900p at 30 FPS is certainly a letdown, I don't see it having as big of an impact as the same specs would for a title like Halo or Call of Duty. That said, Nintendo not providing enough horsepower to attract third-party developers is what drives a lot of gamers away from their devices, especially those that aren't super excited for Nintendo's first-party titles. Why buy a Wii U or a Switch when you know the biggest third-party titles either won't be on it or will be heavily modified and technically inferior to the other platforms they're for? It's a little bit of a tricky market right now when you have such a technology disparity, with the Xbox One S and the PlayStation 4 Pro offering 4K gaming, while Nintendo's like, yeah, maybe 1080p, but some of our better titles will be at 900p. And the reduced horsepower in the console could end up driving a lot of developers away from making games for the Nintendo Switch or porting their games over to the Switch just because of having such strict hardware requirements. I mean, I really can't imagine Battlefield 1 running on something like a Nintendo Switch, but then again, Nintendo's often marketed at a completely different demographic of gamers, often younger, and I have to admit, personally, I am thinking about getting a Switch just to play that cool new Zelda title. Anyway, that wraps it up for today's episode of This Week in Gaming. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing out.